When did you discover your partner's business trips were actually something else? I should have known something was wrong when Katie started packing lingerie for her quarterly sales conferences. For 3 years, she'd traveled with sensible suits and comfortable shoes, conservative blouses, practical flats, the kind of wardrobe that screamed medical supply sales rep attending educational seminars. Then suddenly, she's folding lace thongs into her suitcase for a pharmaceutical convention in Cleveland. New company dress code? I asked, trying to keep it light while watching her pack a red silk dress that still had tags on it. $280 from Nordstrom, according to the receipt I glimpsed. Just want to feel confident, she said, not meeting my eyes. You know how competitive these conferences are. Image matters when you're trying to land big hospital contracts. Katie worked for Meridian Medical Supply, cardiac stents and surgical instruments. Not exactly Victoria's Secret material, but I trusted her completely. We'd been together 5 years, married for 2. She'd never given me reason to doubt her loyalty or honesty. She was the woman who still kissed me goodbye every morning and texted me pictures of her lunch from conference buffets. The trips became more frequent over the following months. Phoenix, Dallas, Miami, Las Vegas, San Diego. Always alone, always for training seminars or client meetings or product launches. She'd return exhausted, distant, needing a full day to readjust before becoming herself again. Her phone would buzz constantly with work emergencies that required her to step outside for privacy, even during family dinners. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered rooms. The way she guarded her laptop, angling the screen away from me like it contained state secrets. How she'd shower immediately after coming home, washing away the scent of airports and conference halls, she claimed. The expensive new clothes that appeared in her wardrobe. Outfits far too glamorous for medical device presentations. Designer perfume bottles I'd never seen before. A sudden interest in fitness and nutrition that seemed focused on looking good, rather than feeling healthy. She started going to bed earlier, claiming travel exhaustion, but I'd catch her texting under the covers when she thought I was asleep. When I'd ask about her trips, her stories became increasingly elaborate, but strangely lacking in specific details about the actual medical content. How was the cardiac catheter seminar? I'd ask. Oh, pretty standard stuff. New technologies, patient outcomes, regulatory changes, she'd say vaguely before changing the subject to what I'd done while she was gone. The breaking point came when her company sent a holiday card to our house. I opened it, expecting the usual corporate message with a generic winter scene and best wishes for the new year. Instead, there was a handwritten note from her boss, Margaret. Thanks for all your hard work this year, Katie. Looking forward to your presentation at the January retreat in Colorado. The cardiac catheter launch should be exciting. Your dedication to the regional accounts has been exceptional. Katie had told me the January trip was canceled due to budget cuts across the entire medical division. That night over dinner, I casually asked about Colorado while we shared takeout Chinese food at our kitchen table. Oh, that got moved to February, she said without hesitation, not even looking up from her lo mein. Budget approval delays, you know how corporate works. Everything's on hold until the new fiscal year. I nodded and smiled, but something cold and sharp settled in my stomach like a piece of broken glass. The lie came so easily, so naturally, like she'd been practicing it. While she showered, I checked our credit card statements online for the first time in months. I'd always trusted her to handle our finances. The December Phoenix conference showed charges to a hotel called Desert Romance Suites. I Googled it immediately. Adult couples resort, champagne packages, romantic dinner specials, heart-shaped jacuzzi tubs, no business center, no conference facilities, no medical professionals in sight. My hands shook as I scrolled through more charges from that trip. Romantic restaurants with wine pairings for 2, couples spa treatments, his and hers massages, a jewelry store purchase for $847. The same day she was supposedly attending presentations on surgical instruments, room service charges that clearly indicated 2 people dining together. I took screenshots of everything, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it over the shower running in the next room. The next morning, after Katie left for work, I called her company pretending to be a vendor needing to confirm her travel schedule for product deliveries. The receptionist, Linda, was helpful and chatty. Katie? Oh, she's wonderful to work with, so professional and knowledgeable about our products. She only travels twice a year for our regional meetings, though. Very focused on local clients here in the metro area. Her next trip isn't until May for the spring conference in Chicago. The room spun. Every trip, every explanation, every careful detail she'd shared about hotel conference rooms and vendor booths. All lies. I hung up and sat in our kitchen, staring at the coffee mug she'd used that morning. It still had her lipstick print on the rim, the same shade I'd watched her apply before dozens of business trips. For the next week, I turned into someone I didn't recognize. I installed keylogger software on our shared laptop when she wasn't home. I followed her to work twice, confirming she actually went there and wasn't meeting someone else during her supposed work days. I even called hotels in cities she'd visited, pretending to be her assistant needing to modify future reservations. The pattern emerged like a disease spreading through our marriage. Every business trip was a fabrication. She was traveling somewhere, spending our money, but not for work. The hotel charges, restaurant bills, and entertainment expenses painted a picture of romantic getaways, not medical conferences. I needed to know who she was with. Her phone was always locked with a 6-digit passcode, but I'd seen her enter it hundreds of times while sitting next to her on the couch. I started paying attention, memorizing the pattern of her finger movements. 4 taps, 7293, save, our wedding date. That night, after she fell asleep next to me in our bed, the same bed where we'd planned our future together, I carefully lifted her phone from the nightstand. The text thread was labeled Marcus Work. I'd heard her mention Marcus before, a colleague from another department at a partner company, but these weren't work messages about medical devices or client accounts. Can't wait to see you in Atlanta. Wear the red dress, you know which one. Missing you already. 3 weeks feels like forever. This sneaking around is killing me. Tell David you're going to the Miami conference. I've already booked us the penthouse suite at the Fontainebleau. David, that was me. My name in their messages about deceiving me. I scrolled back months, my stomach churning as their affair unfolded in reverse chronological order. The messages told the whole story in devastating detail. They'd been together for over a year. Marcus was married too, with 2 kids and a wife named Jennifer. They'd created this elaborate system of fake conferences and business trips to meet in different cities, coordinating their lies to their respective spouses. My hands trembled as I read their discussions about me. How I was clueless and trusting to a fault. How Katie felt guilty sometimes but couldn't resist the excitement and passion. How they'd almost been caught when Marcus's wife found a hotel receipt, but he'd convinced her it was for a legitimate business trip by showing her a fake conference agenda he'd created. The cruelest part? They were planning to leave their spouses after Katie's promotion came through in 6 months. She was waiting for financial security and a higher salary before filing for divorce. They'd already discussed how to split assets, how to minimize alimony payments, how to present their affair as something that happened after their marriages were already over. I took photos of everything with my own phone, documenting their betrayal in excruciating detail. The next morning, Katie announced another trip over breakfast. Miami again. Big client presentation for the new heart valve technology. Probably 3 days this time. Sounds important, I said, pouring her coffee like nothing had changed, though everything had changed. Which hospital system? Jackson Health, she said without missing a beat. Their cardiac surgery department is expanding. Another lie. I made a mental note to verify that Jackson Health wasn't even in their client database, but everything had changed. I spent that day creating a detailed spreadsheet of her lies, dates, locations, expenses, contradictions between her stories and the evidence. I printed bank statements, hotel confirmations, and screenshots of their text conversations. I organized everything chronologically, building a timeline of deception that would be impossible to deny. Then I hired a private investigator. I need photos, I told him during our meeting at a downtown coffee shop. Definitive proof for divorce proceedings. My wife is having an affair, and they meet during fake business trips. Richard was in his 50s, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. He was expensive, but came highly recommended. How long has this been going on? At least 13 months, maybe longer. Standard package includes surveillance, photography, and a detailed report. We can track their movements, document their activities, provide time-stamped evidence that will hold up in court. He was thorough and professional. Within a week, I had professional photographs of Katie and Marcus checking into the Fontainebleau in Miami, holding hands in the elevator, kissing by the pool, walking together on the beach at sunset. The photos were time-stamped and location verified, showing them together during the exact dates she claimed to be in business meetings. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I wanted to understand the full scope of her deception, to map out every lie she told and every expense she'd hidden. I created a fake email account and spent hours researching Marcus's background. I found his LinkedIn profile, his company information, his social media accounts. Then I found his wife. Jennifer Martinez worked as a kindergarten teacher at an elementary school across town. Her Facebook page showed a happy family. Marcus, Jennifer, and their 2 young children at Disney World, at soccer games, at birthday parties. She had no idea her husband was living a double life. I sent her an anonymous message with one photo, her husband kissing my wife by the hotel pool, and my phone number. Call me, we need to talk. She called within an hour, sobbing hysterically. How long? She asked through her tears. At least 13 months that I can prove. Probably longer. Oh God. I knew something was wrong. I knew it. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Jennifer was exactly what I'd expected from her photos. Kind, soft-spoken, the type of person who teaches children because she genuinely cares about their development. She'd suspected something, but convinced herself she was being paranoid, that Marcus's distance and frequent travel were just stress from his promotion at work. He's been so different, she said, stirring her latte absently. Always working late, always traveling to conferences. He bought new clothes, started working out, changed his cologne. When I asked about it, he said he wanted to look professional for client meetings. We compared notes like detectives working a case. The stories Marcus told her matched Katie's lies to me, almost word for word. They'd practiced their deception together, coordinating their alibis and covering for each other's absence. Jennifer showed me Marcus's credit card statements that she'd printed after receiving my message. Expensive dinners for 2 on nights he claimed to be working late at the office. Hotel charges in cities where he said he was attending solo conferences. Purchases at Victoria's Secret and jewelry stores on days he was supposedly in meetings. What do we do? She asked, her voice small and broken. I'd been thinking about that constantly. We document everything. Then we decide how much they deserve to know that we know. For 3 weeks, we gathered evidence like prosecutors building a federal case. Jennifer installed GPS tracking on Marcus's car using an app she found online. I recorded Katie's phone calls using a voice recorder app whenever she stepped outside to take them, hiding near windows and doors to capture her conversations. The recordings were devastating. Katie and Marcus discussing their future together, laughing about their spouse's ignorance, planning their next getaway to Cabo. Katie even mentioned how she'd manipulate the divorce proceedings to get half of everything, including the inheritance I'd received from my grandmother. "David's so trusting, he'll probably give me whatever I ask for to avoid conflict," she said during one recorded call. "He hates confrontation. I can play the victim, say I was lonely and neglected. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling genuinely angry." Jennifer and I met weekly to share our findings. She was methodical, taking detailed notes about Marcus's behavior changes, his lies about work schedules, his suspicious expenses. We created a shared cloud drive with all our evidence: photos, recordings, financial records, timelines of their deceptions. "I feel like I'm going crazy," Jennifer admitted during one of our meetings. "Like I'm living with a stranger who happens to look like my husband." "I know exactly what you mean," I said. "It's like discovering that the person you married was an actor playing a role." The plan came together naturally. Katie's next conference was scheduled for Las Vegas, a 3-day medical device exposition that, according to my research, didn't exist. I confirmed this by calling the Las Vegas Convention Center directly and asking about medical conferences that weekend. Nothing was scheduled. Jennifer and I booked flights to Vegas separately, using credit cards our spouses didn't monitor. I told Katie I was visiting my brother in Denver that weekend, a story she seemed relieved to hear. She probably thought it gave her more freedom to enjoy her romantic getaway. Marcus told Jennifer he was attending a training seminar in Chicago for new sales techniques. Friday evening, we watched them check into Caesar's Palace from across the lobby, hiding behind newspapers like characters in a spy movie. They were giddy, holding hands like teenagers, completely oblivious to our presence 20 feet away. Katie was wearing the red dress Marcus had mentioned in their texts, the one that cost $280. Saturday morning, while they had breakfast by the pool, Jennifer and I went to their room. I'd learned the room number by bribing a housekeeping supervisor with a $100 bill and a story about surprising my cheating wife. The door was propped open for cleaning. I placed a small recording device under the bedside table, a device Richard had recommended for capturing conversations. Jennifer left Marcus's inhaler, which he'd genuinely forgotten at home, on the nightstand with a note. "You forgot this. Love, Jay." They'd know she'd been there, but not why or how she'd found them. That evening, we followed them to dinner at Nobu in the hotel. They sat outside on the terrace, completely absorbed in each other, feeding each other sushi and whispering intimately. Using a telephoto lens I'd borrowed from a photographer friend, I captured dozens of photos of them together. Marcus's hand on Katie's thigh, Katie whispering in his ear, both of them laughing at private jokes. Saturday night, we listened from the hallway as they returned to their room. The recording device captured everything: their passionate reunion, their discussions about leaving their spouses, their plans for a future together. It was painful, but necessary evidence. Sunday morning, they checked out separately, a precaution that seemed pointless given how publicly affectionate they'd been all weekend. We flew home on different flights, maintaining our cover. Monday evening, Katie returned from her conference with stories about boring seminars and networking events. She showed me a conference bag filled with medical supply brochures, props she'd obviously purchased online to maintain her cover story. "How was Vegas?" I asked innocently while helping her unpack. "Vegas? I was in Denver," she corrected quickly, her face flushing slightly. "Right, Denver. How was the Mile High City?" She launched into a detailed story about a presentation she'd given on cardiac stents, describing slide presentations and audience questions with impressive creativity. Every word was a carefully constructed lie. That night, after she fell asleep, I transferred all our evidence to multiple secure cloud drives. Then I called my lawyer, someone I'd found through careful research who specialized in high-conflict divorces. "I need to file for divorce," I said during our early morning meeting. "And I need to protect my assets from a spouse who's been planning to manipulate the proceedings." The lawyer, Patricia, reviewed everything: the photos, recordings, financial records, timeline of deception. She whistled low when she saw the scope of our evidence. "This is the most comprehensive adultery documentation I've seen in 20 years of practice. She won't be able to claim reconciliation attempts or temporary lapse in judgment. This shows premeditation, ongoing deception, and financial planning around the affair." We filed the papers immediately. In our state, adultery affects asset division and alimony calculations. Katie's affair would cost her significantly, possibly everything. But I wanted one final confrontation before she was served. Wednesday evening, I cooked her favorite dinner, salmon with lemon risotto, the meal I'd made for our first anniversary. I opened a bottle of the wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. I set the table with our wedding china, the dishes we'd registered for and received as gifts from people who believed in our marriage. "What's the occasion?" she asked, genuinely surprised by the romantic setup. "Just felt like celebrating us," I said, pouring wine into glasses that had been wedding gifts from her grandmother. During dinner, I asked about her work, her travel schedule, her goals for the coming year. She answered enthusiastically, spinning more elaborate lies about upcoming conferences and client meetings. She even mentioned the Vegas trip again, catching herself and correcting it to Denver with a nervous laugh. "You seem distracted lately," I said, watching her carefully. "Everything okay at work?" "Just busy," she said. "You know how it is in medical sales. Always pressure to meet quotas and maintain relationships." After dinner, I poured more wine and pulled out my laptop. "I want to show you something," I said, setting it on the table between us. "I've been working on a little project." I opened a PowerPoint presentation I'd spent days creating, titled Katie's Business Trips, A Comprehensive Analysis. The first slide showed a map with pins marking all her supposed conference locations. The second slide showed the same map with pins marking her actual locations. luxury resorts and romantic hotels, none of which hosted medical conferences. Katie's face went white as she stared at the screen. "What is this?" she whispered, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of her and Marcus kissing by the Fontainebleau pool, time-stamped and location verified. Click. Hotel receipts for romantic suites booked under both their names. Click. Screenshots of their text conversations, including their discussions about deceiving me. Click. A recording of her voice saying, "David's so trusting he'd believe anything. I can manipulate him during the divorce." Katie started crying, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "I can explain." "No need," I said calmly, closing the laptop. "I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow at work. Marcus will be served at his office at the same time." She looked up at me with a mixture of shock and terror. "We can work through this. It was a mistake." 13 months isn't a mistake, Katie. It's a choice. A series of deliberate choices to lie to me every single day. I clicked to the final slide, a photo of our wedding day with the caption, "What we had was real. What you've been living is a lie." She begged then, falling apart completely. She promised to end things with Marcus immediately. She offered to go to counseling, to quit her job, to do whatever it took to save our marriage. She swore the affair meant nothing, that it was just physical attraction and escapism. "Too late," I said, standing up from the table. "I'm done being the trusting husband who believes in conference calls from Cleveland." The next morning, process servers found both Katie and Marcus at their respective workplaces. Jennifer had filed for divorce too, using copies of all our evidence. Within hours, their affair was exposed to their colleagues, families, and friends. Katie's boss called her into an emergency meeting. Using company credit cards and claiming fake business expenses for personal trips was grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. Marcus faced similar consequences at his company. Katie moved out that weekend, staying with her sister while looking for an apartment she could afford on unemployment benefits. Marcus's wife kicked him out immediately. He ended up in a studio apartment across town, paying child support for 2 kids he now saw every other weekend. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. With such clear evidence of adultery and financial deception, Katie's lawyer advised her to accept a settlement quickly rather than face a trial that would only expose more of her lies. She kept her car and some personal items. I kept everything else: the house, my inheritance, my retirement accounts, the savings she'd planned to take half of. During the proceedings, more details emerged. Katie and Marcus had been planning their affair for months before it became physical, meeting for innocent lunches and building emotional intimacy. They'd researched divorce laws, consulted with attorneys separately, and even looked at apartments together where they planned to live after leaving their spouses. The final hearing was anticlimactic. Katie sat at the defendant's table looking small and defeated, wearing clothes I'd never seen before, probably borrowed from her sister since she couldn't afford new ones. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before dissolving our marriage, she shook her head silently. "The dissolution is granted," the judge said, stamping papers that ended 5 years of my life. As we left the courthouse, Katie caught up with me in the parking lot, her lawyer having departed immediately after the hearing. "I never meant for it to happen like this," she said, her voice barely audible. "Marcus and we just connected. It felt like something I'd been missing my whole life." I looked at her, this woman I'd loved completely, planned a future with, trusted with everything I had. "You know what you were missing?" I said, unlocking my car. "Integrity." That was 18 months ago. I still live in our house, but it feels different now. Lighter somehow, like a weight has been lifted from rooms that used to feel heavy with unspoken tensions. I've redecorated extensively, removing traces of our shared life and replacing them with things I actually like. The bedroom has new furniture, new paint, new everything. I travel now, real trips to places I want to see, not fabricated conferences in resort towns. I've taken cooking classes at the community college, learned photography through online courses, started hiking with a group that meets every weekend. I'm in the best shape of my life, physically and emotionally. Last month I ran into Jennifer at a coffee shop downtown. She looks amazing, confident, happy, glowing in a way I never saw during our conspiracy meetings. She's dating someone new, a fellow teacher named Michael who makes her laugh and treats her children like they're precious. We compared notes on our ex-spouses briefly. Marcus lost his job after the affair became public knowledge and had to take a position with a much smaller company at half his previous salary. He's struggling to pay child support and rent. Katie moved to Phoenix for a fresh start, working at a call center and living in a 1-bedroom apartment. "Do you regret how we handled it?" Jennifer asked, stirring honey into her tea. I thought about it carefully. No, they had months to come clean. We gave them every opportunity to tell the truth, to end the deception, to show some respect for their marriages. "Sometimes I feel bad about the photos and the recording," she admitted, "like we invaded their privacy." "Don't," I said firmly. "They chose to conduct their affair in public hotels, to lie to our faces every day, to plan our financial destruction. We just documented what they were already doing." "Michael says I'm too trusting now," she said with a small laugh. "He has to show me his phone and tell me exactly where he's going." "That's not trust issues," I said. "That's wisdom." As I walked home from the coffee shop, I thought about trust, how easily it breaks, how hard it is to rebuild, how different it looks when you've seen behind the curtain of elaborate deception. Katie's betrayal taught me that love without honesty is just an elaborate performance, and I'd been the unwitting audience for over a year. I'm dating again now. Her name is Rachel, and she's a nurse at the local hospital where I volunteer on weekends. She knows my entire story, understands my scars, and respects my need for transparency. When she tells me she's working late or visiting friends, I believe her. But I also verify quietly and without drama. Some might call that paranoid. I call it informed. Because once you've seen how easily someone can construct an alternate reality around business trips to Cleveland, how naturally lies can flow about cardiac catheter conferences, how completely a person can compartmentalize their deception, you never quite view trust the same way again. But that's okay. My new life, built on truth instead of convenient fiction, on genuine connection rather than elaborate performance, is worth more than the comfortable delusion I lived in before. Rachel and I talk about everything. She shows me her work schedule, introduces me to her colleagues, includes me in her social activities. There are no mysterious phone calls, no secretive laptop sessions, no expensive clothes with no explanation. When she travels for nursing conferences, real ones that I can verify exist, she sends me photos of the actual seminars, forwards me her flight information, calls me from her hotel room. Not because I demand it, but because she understands that transparency is how trust rebuilds. The house that once felt like a stage set for Katie's performance now feels like a home again. I've hosted dinner parties, game nights, holiday gatherings. Friends comment on how much happier I seem, how much more present and engaged I am. Sometimes late at night, I think about parallel universes. In one, Katie never met Marcus. In another, she confessed early and we worked through it. In a third, I never found that holiday card from her boss. But in this universe, the one where I documented everything and refused to be gaslit about conference calls from romantic resorts, I'm free. Free from wondering where she really is. Free from analyzing every story for inconsistencies. Free from living with someone who could look me in the eye and lie about cardiac stent presentations while planning to take half my inheritance. The betrayal hurt. The lies stung. The discovery process was exhausting. But the truth set me free. And that's worth more than all the fake business trips to paradise that my former wife could ever take.